With all of this talk about music and dancing in the gospel reading today, I thought I'd offer a slightly different interpretation of verse 17 from one of my favorite bands, Me Without You. Now, fair warning, they are a little eclectic for some people's taste, but in their song Torches Together, they say, "You played the flute, but no one was dancing. You sang a sad song, and none of us cried." I read someone's interpretation of verses 18 and 19 as well, and it goes like this. John came neither eating nor drinking, and they did not care for his style at all. He was too old school for their taste, too stern and demanding. So they played the flute and said, "Come on, John, lighten up, man. Lay off the hellfire and dance to our tune." Then Jesus came, and he was ready to dance as they had never dreamed. Every meal was a party, as long as everyone was invited. Then they wailed and complained about the company Jesus kept and called him a glutton and a drunkard. I love and am challenged by this interpretation because it's so real and so true of humanity, almost comically so. For us, we can see God's ways as both too little and too much for us. We chafe under John the Baptist's unapologetic insistence that a moment of decision is at hand for each of us with our faith. Following Jesus means we must examine our hearts, let the chaff burn away, and embrace God's future with our whole lives. However, Jesus can also rub us the wrong way. We can be unwilling to follow Jesus if it means we must change our tune, if it means we must change our direction, if it means we must change and reorient our hearts, if it means we must change our rhythm. People were critical of Jesus' enjoyment of libations, that Jesus, a friend of tax collectors and sinners, that Jesus, the one not impressed by the most powerful authorities of this world, Jesus, who lifts up widows, orphans, aliens, anyone trampled on by this world. Jesus is a friend of tax collectors and sinners, and this can rub us the wrong way. That Jesus doesn't get it with his irrational exuberance. He just doesn't seem to grasp that some people are beyond hope, that we must keep select company in order to keep our lives on an even keel. Jesus forces us to open the borders in our hearts when we change our tune to follow him. Both of the messages of John and Jesus are a threat to our belief of hard-won autonomy and freedom. We long to maintain a happy medium between John's seemingly stifling demands, his hands in his pockets, not partaking in eating or drinking, or Jesus' frightening inclusiveness. So we keep changing our tune away from both, insisting on the moderation or maybe mediocrity that we can secure for ourselves, instead of the extraordinary future that God dreams for us and for the world. I think Karl Barth encapsulates what it means to live into the rhythm of Jesus. Righteousness, justice, and goodness always requires favoring the threatened innocent, the oppressed, poor, widow, orphans, and aliens. God always stands unconditionally and passionately on this side, and on this side alone, against the lofty and behalf of the lowly, against those who already enjoy rights and privileges, and on behalf of those who are denied and deprived of it. When we tune into Jesus, we begin to identify and listen to the plight of those living on the fringes of our society and the fringes of our lives. We cannot change our tune and ignore the uncomfortable feelings or mourning with our black and brown siblings as we strive to bring about God's dreams for the world. You played the flute, but no one danced. You sang a sad song, and none of us cried. Jesus' focus is not on the powerful, on the wise and intelligent ones who so often attract our attention, but on the people we might ignore. Do we hear? Do we hear and do we dance in rhythm with God's dream for this world? Do we dance in rhythm with God's true intention for humanity? This gospel text today is Jesus' invitation to dance, to live into the rhythm of Christ as we encounter this world. A call to dance, to wail, to mourn, a call to be as attuned to the realities of this world as Jesus was and is. This dance of Jesus does not always come natural to us. We can be like children sitting in the marketplace, constantly distracted. We have to actively tune our hearts to Jesus because so often we are so easily lulled by the other songs and voices of our world. Not only do we miss the moments that matter, we regularly dance when we ought to mourn for a world whose burden is heavy and for a people who need rest. Tuning our hearts to Christ is Jesus' invitation, Jesus' call to discipleship, Jesus' call to follow him, issued at the close of today's gospel passage from Matthew. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. Jesus' call to discipleship, a call to encounter this world with humble and gentle hearts, a call to hear the cries of people seeking justice, to hear and to be moved to work towards a more just and equitable world, to not rush past mourning, to not become deaf to the cries of people around us. Jesus does not offer rest to the strongest and most powerful. Rest is offered to those who have been made weary by a world that fails to comprehend the burden of injustice. The yoke is made easy by the heavenly powers coming to the aid of those whose way this world fails to understand. We learn what true discipleship means by being challenged by the plain truth of our acts and how they affect those around us, like ripples on a pond, or sometimes like a tidal wave after an earthquake. Jesus asks us to hear something new. Jesus asks to hear a message that proclaims love and justice rather than death and domination are at the heart of our lives. Do we hear the music playing and dance in rhythm? Amen.